You guys may have noticed that with Madden 26, there's been some changes to the depth chart and franchise as a whole. Well, today we're going to talk about what those changes are and what you need to look out for when it comes to handling your depth chart in Madden 26 franchise. So I figured for today's video, we are going to go through the depth chart like we have in the past, and then I'm going to show you a couple of examples as to how you can figure out which players are going to be in which scenarios. Specifically for defense, because that's where it seems to have the biggest mix-up with like the nose tackle, the new edge positions. So let's just start from the top. We'll go through it. For those of you who are maybe newer to the game, do not fully understand how the depth chart works, maybe if it's just standard positioning, this video will help you out. So make sure you stick around and check it all out. And of course, I'd appreciate it if you drop a like if it does help you out, and let me know down below. So we're going to start off first. Quarterback position, pretty self-explanatory. Your quarterback. There isn't really anything you have to worry about with this position. You just set it and you're good to go. Halfback is where you're going to run into a couple of different scenarios. There is halfback, there is power back, and then there is 3DRB, third down running back, whatever you want to call it. It'll be 3DRB on the sheet here, and I'll show you right over here is where you'll find it. So you see that Aaron Jones is their third down running back. Our power back, well, is also Aaron Jones. Will probably make that Jordan Mason. And then our standard halfback is, well, our standard halfback. So you will notice, though, that if you have one player in the halfback position, you might not see him on the field as much as you think you will, because there are quite a lot of formations that require the third down running back, specifically when you're playing out of shotgun formation. So when you are playing in shotgun, you will notice a lot of the times whoever is listed here will be the guy that's in for your plays. So if there's a specific person that you want to be able to catch the ball out of the backfield more, maybe be more of your main running back, you're going to want to make sure that they're set in your 3DRB spot on your depth chart. And then, of course, the PW halfback, which is power halfback, is for your goal line situations, your power formations, some of the I forms, maybe you have more than one tight end. This is the guy that's going to come in to try to get those tough yards for you. So again, if you have somebody particular that you want doing that, then you're going to want to make sure that they're listed under the PWHP on your depth chart. Fullback is very simple. You have your fullback and you put him in here. Right now, the fullback for this team is Hurts, so we're not going to use him. But a lot of teams might not even have a fullback, and usually you can find a tight end like you see. Josh Oliver here is a 76 overall fullback. You can put him in as a fullback, and what that means is if he's here, he will be your guy in I formations when you have a fullback in the lineup, even though he is a tight end. And depending on how good his blocking attributes are, it might end up being a better move for you than having to pick up a fullback in free agency. So might save you a roster spot. Wide receiver is another one where there is more than one position you have to focus on, and that is slot receiver. So wide receiver is going to be considered your outside wide receiver. So when you're looking at a formation, you have your two, let's say you have a guy in the slot and then you have two guys on the outside of the formation. That is where this will go. So 1, 2, 3, 4, it's always on the outside. If you're looking to find where your inside receivers are going to come from, it's going to be from the SLWR position, or slot wide receiver. So if I have Adam Thielen and Jalen Nailor set here, when we go into a 4 receiver set, and you have 2 on each side, so your left inside receiver in a 4 receiver set is going to be your first slot receiver. So it'll be Adam Thielen, and then your second one on the right side on the inside will be Jalen Nailor. And no matter who you have set here is who it will pull. So if I decide for some reason that I want Aaron Jones to be my number 1 slot receiver, when it comes to having 3 receivers on the field, they are not going to care about Jalen Nailor here being the 3rd receiver, because this is for the outside receiver. It's going to take the first player that's listed under this position right here. In this case is Aaron Jones. So again, if you have a bunch of routes where you have a 3rd receiver on the inside and you want a certain guy there, you got to make sure you come to SLWR and set him in this screen in order for it to work for you. Tight end, very self-explanatory, same as quarterback. You just plug them, tight end 1, 2, and 3. There isn't really anything tricky about it. And the same goes for the whole offensive line. Left tackle, left guard, center, right guard, right tackle. There's not a lot to really talk about here. If a guy plays better at one position, you can go ahead and put him like this on the depth chart. It doesn't matter. You can switch out their position if you want to, but you don't necessarily need to, since all offensive linemen are able to play any of the offensive line positions. So you see here, Brian O'Neill's our right tackle. If I really wanted to, I could put him as our starting center. He's available in the depth chart. They're all they're all interchangeable. Some of them you might even find, like maybe you draft a guard or a tackle and you notice that, well, he's a 73 tackle, but he's a 75 guard. It might mean that you should change him to a guard, or at least put him there in the depth chart to maximize your attributes for the players. So defense is where it really changed. This is where the big change happened, and I have some not diagrams. I'm sounding too fancy. I don't have diagrams. I just have a picture with some boxes on it to show you guys so that you know where these players are going to line up and when they're going to come out into these lineups. So the left edge position and the right edge position here, these are essentially taking over if you were in a 4-3, what your RE and LE were, and if you were in a 3-4, what your ROLB and LOLB were. So it's essentially your pass rushers, the guys that are going to be rushing the passer. There is no more ROLB, RE, LE, LOLB. It's gone. It's done. So in its place, you have this alone, left edge and right edge, nothing else. And I'll explain how they intertwine again later. We're just going to go through the positions first. So this will count for both 4-3 and 3-4. There is no more differentiation aside from paying attention to the type of players you have. Like right here, Andrew Van Ginkel, 6'4", 240. That's a pretty good size for either on the line or standing up. But if you find a guy like Chaz Chambliss here, who's 6'1", 242, you probably want to be playing a 3-4 for him to be an edge player, because usually if they're standing up, it's okay for them to be a little bit on the smaller side. They don't need to be massive. But if they're a 4-3 defensive end, right, their hands in the dirt on the line with the 2 defensive tackles, you want them to be a little bit bigger to be able to handle that easier. So that's really the only thing you have to pay attention to. You will also see guys on the edge position, especially in the drafts, which I hope they change, that are like 300 pounds, because these guys were defensive ends in past Maddens and now they are considered edge. So a lot of those guys that you see that are like 280 plus, they're probably better suited to be a defensive tackle for you. But anyway, they will be in the edge positions within your draft, so pay attention to that. So now you have defensive tackle, and in the past, this was the main position for the middle of your defense, the middle of the line. Not really anymore. I mean, it is still the middle, but there is now another position that comes into play, and that is the nose tackle position. So the nose tackle, you would hear this term a lot from a defense that's running out of a 3-4, because that middle guy was just a one big nose tackle, right? He is the guy in the middle of it all. He is the guy that's going to stuff the run. He is the hole plugger, if you will. Pause. But anyway, that is what his job is, okay? He is going to come in. He is going to take care of business in the middle to allow the rushers to have a little bit better time doing their job. Now they have D tackles and nose tackle for positions in the depth chart. And again, I will show you how the differences are for laying out in different formations, but just know that this is not the only position you have to worry about. And once I show you these pictures, you might make more sense of how you should really be structuring your team and setting up these positions. But until we get there, you just got to bear with me, okay? So we went over the D tackle. We know there's the nose tackle. We went over the edge positions. One thing I didn't mention about the edge positions is there's also the same as last year, the RLE and the RRE. Essentially what this is the same thing as edge, left edge and right edge, but specifically for a pass rushing situation. And what that means is usually like a nickel set or a dime set, where you'll see the RRE or RLE come into play instead of the right edge and the left edge. But it all still means sort of the same thing. The other big change is for the linebackers. There is no longer an outside linebacker. There's no longer a middle linebacker. You have your Sam, your Mike, and your Will. Now, how this position is going to be laid out, essentially see it as the Sam is the left outside linebacker of old, the Mike is the middle linebacker, and the Will is the right outside linebacker. So when you are playing and you are seeing these formations come in and out, a lot of the times it's going to be positions from your Mike and your Will that you're going to see more than anything. You're not going to see the Sam come into play very often at all, unless you're in a very base set defense, and we'll get into that again in a little bit. You will notice the game has barely anybody at a Sam. I'm not understanding how that was a thing. Like, they just put nobody at the Sam position. So yeah, you probably have to find somebody or move a couple of guys over so that way you fit the criteria for how many players you need to have at each position. But that is what you'll be paying attention to, is Sam, Mike, and Will. And these guys are no longer going to be guys you want to have for edge rushing. Like in the past, you'd have an outside linebacker, and depending on your team, you might need a speed rusher or a power rusher. No more. You just want guys that can play the run and play in the pass coverage for your defense. You do not want guys anymore that are supposed to rush the passer. That is not a thing anymore. So make sure you don't try to find them, because you probably won't find them anymore, and you shouldn't anyway. So corner is the same as it always has been. You have on the right side of the formation, if you're looking at the play art, this is where your number 1's going to be, and then this is where your number 2 is going to be. Okay. So you sort of gotta, sometimes you gotta flip-flop them. Like that's what I do, is I'll flip-flop 1 and 2, because for whatever reason the game still has these positions backwards, and maybe at this point it's not even by accident anymore, maybe they do it on purpose, but it doesn't make any sense to me. So a long time ago in Madden's past, your number 1 wide receiver would line up on this side of the formation. Okay, they were always on this side of the formation for you. And I'm talking like as if you guys are looking at, like, my window is a play art here. Like, I'm not doing this backwards, okay? So on this side is where your number 1 lined up. And this is where a lot of like the red routes that you see are. Red routes just means primary receiver on that play. And then your number 2 would line up on this side. A couple years back, they switched it to where now your number 1 is lining up over here and your number 2 is lining up over here. But the corners were never switched. So now, right now, how it sets, if this hand is the number 1 wide receiver, if you have your number 1 corner at the number 1 corner position, so like let's say Isaiah Rodgers is our number 1 for whatever reason, he's lining up over here. See that? Sorry, I'm trying to make sure I'm in the frame. So like, here's your number 1 corner, and here's your number 1 wide receiver. So what I'll normally do is I'll put my number 1 corner at my number 2 corner spot. So now I have him right over the top of the number 1 wide receiver, and then the 2s are over on this side. That's just the way it works, because now the receiver is lined up on this side of the formation for you for a lot of the red routes and where your number 1 goes. So it's just more of a matchup thing. So this is what I always do. I always slide my number 1 down to number 2, and then it's usually pretty good from there. Of course, if you go into the game, you can just also have them play by overall, and it should fix it for you. And the corners also act like wide receivers in the way with the SL combination that they have. So much like we had SLWR, we also have SLCB, which is your slot corner. So in this case, it has Brian Murphy. He should not be. Let's just say we have Okudah there. Now, because Okudah is number 1 here, if I go into a nickel or dime defense, Okudah is going to be the number 1 guy that's going to be on the inside receiver. So it's same exact situation as with the receivers. Your regular CB is going to be your outside guys, and then your SLCB is going to be the inside guys. So that's why you want to make sure you have this set the same way that you want it to be in the game, because if you have it set to where 1 through 4 is your priority, like if you say, I want these 4 guys in this order to be on the field, but yet like 3 and 4 are not the 1 and 2 in the SLCW, they won't be on the field when you have 4 corners out there, because it's going to follow strictly what is listed in the SLCB slot for your depth chart. Last thing I forgot to go over is sub linebacker, and this is essentially the same thing for linebackers, except in pass rushing or in passing situations. So when you're in nickel, when you're in dime, it's going to pull from this list instead of your standard Mike and your standard Will positions. And again, I will show you on the layouts exactly where you can find each one of these positions right as we're done here, which is really quickly actually. The last position is new. It's gadget. And this does not mean that this player will have a certain spot on formations that they are subbed into. But what it means is when you are inside the game, you can actually set it as a package, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So when you're in a game and you're on this screen for choosing a play, if you go into a formation, and let's just go to, we'll go split close pro, right? And let's say we want to put our gadget player in. So in this case, Aaron Jones is our gadget player, so we're really not going to see a whole lot of difference out of what we see. But if you look down right here on this bar to my right, you will see double random run, or double tap random run, random play, and then packages. So if you scroll on packages, you'll see it says backup quarterback, backup halfback, power halfback, third down back, fullback at halfback, backup tight end at fullback. It's got a whole bunch of different ones. Tight end at Z. Z is your right side receiver. So that's what that means. Tight end at X, that's your number 1 wide receiver. Wide receiver swap, flip them around. And then you have gadget. Gadget at halfback. That's really the only thing. Okay. So essentially what it's for is there's guys like Deebo Samuel, maybe Justin Jefferson, guys that can do multiple things within an offense, right? And now if you want to be able to use them in the run game and not just in the pass game, you can put them as your gadget player. And that would allow me to have a guy like Justin Jefferson as my gadget, so that way I could put him in the backfield here for a run play instead of being a receiver. There's nothing in the depth chart that you have to like it's not going to affect a specific formation. It's just about if you choose this package when you're on this screen and want to play it with that way. So that's really the only way where it's going to come into effect to you. So if you don't care about that, then just don't even worry about it. All right, so we have seen pretty much everything that I need to show you. So now what I'm going to do, and we're only doing this for the 4 main sets on defense, base 4-3, base 3-4, nickel, and dime packages. I'm going to show you how the layout breaks down with the front 7 because it does change quite a bit, and I was actually very surprised with how they worked it. It made more sense to me once I saw it, because I would be playing the game and I'm like, why is dude in here? And then I went back and I looked through this after I did this testing and I realized, oh, that's why. So let's check that out so you guys don't make the same mistake I did. All right, so the first defense we're going to talk about is my personal favorite defense. That is the 4-3. So here is a look at how the base 4-3 breaks down when it comes to the new depth chart situation. So you'll see that your edge positions are just as they are, right edge, left edge. However, in the middle, it is not DT 1 and 2. It is now nose tackle 1 and defensive tackle 1. So I think what they're doing is they're sort of treating the defensive tackle position almost like your 3 technique, where it's like your smaller, more agile defensive tackle that's also good for pass cut or pass rushing, right? Not just stuffing the run. So the guy that, like Aaron Donald, right? You got your Ted Washington at nose tackle. Shout out if you remember who that is. And then you got Aaron Donald at defensive tackle. So that's sort of how they're playing that now within the defense. And then up above on the linebackers, it's very simple. Sam, Will, Mike. Sam, Mike, Will, sorry. And then you can see how your cornerback 1 is way over there and your quarterback 2 is right up here. And then you have your free safety and your strong safety. So it does adjust it a little bit. So if you want a certain guy in on your 4-3 packaging for defensive tackles, you got to make sure they're at those 2 positions that you see. I just tried pointing over here because this is where it is on my screen, or on my side. Like, you guys could see that, and well, you guys couldn't. And now it's time for our 3-4 lineup. And this one is a little different. You'll notice that the 2 that are on the outside that are sort of a little bit higher than your 3 on the line, those are your edge rushers, right? And again, it's right edge, left edge, very simple. But then on the line, DT1, nose tackle, DT2. So they're treating the defensive tackles almost like they would the defensive ends in a 3-4. That's sort of how I'm seeing it, right? So DT1 and DT2 are on your outside positions on the line, your nose tackles in the middle, and then you have your edge on the outside for rushing purposes. And then at the top, you'll see that it's Will and Mike. So very similar to how it was with middle linebacker and right outside linebacker. Those are the 2 that would usually be on the field the most. And then your sub linebacker packages would be, you know, somewhere in there. And now when I have this listed as like the name, that is the depth chart position. It is not sub. I will show you where it comes in. It doesn't come in very often until we get to like the next sets, but both of these base alignments are going to use your standard operating, your standard positioning from the depth chart. And now it's time for the nickel coverage. And this is where the R's come into play. All along the defensive line, it is no more of the base stuff. You have your RRE and your RLE on the outsides, and then you have your RDT and your RDT2 on the inside. So no base positions at all on the line, no base positions at all in the second level at linebacker. It's sub 1 and sub 2. And then, of course, you can see that right over here, your slot corner comes in and your slot number 1 is listed right here on the inside. Now, it could be either position, like either side. It just depends on which side they end up lining up on. I just threw it over there because that's the most common lineup. But anyway, the safeties never change. So don't worry, you don't have to look up there. They never change. And then our last one is dime. And dime is pretty much the same, except now you'll see that slot 2 is in here instead of another linebacker, and you just have sub 1 for the linebacker. But everything on the defensive line stays the same. Everything in the back end of the secondary stays the same. And so that is how you'll want to make sure your stuff is lined up. So if you are looking to have your nose tackle and defensive tackle be certain players, you have to make sure that they're listed in those specific categories on your depth chart to make sure that they're on the field for you. Not too long of a video today. That's all I wanted to go over. I just wanted to show you guys what's changed in the depth chart and how you can find the positions with, you know, what you're doing. If you have any questions, feel free to put them down in the comments below. I'll usually go through and I'll answer most of the comments when I get a chance to, or some other people that watch my content also will answer some questions, and they're pretty knowledgeable too. So I hope that this helps you out. I hope it unconfused you if you were a little confused as to how the new positions play out in the depth chart and in the formations. But anyways, that is all I got for you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know down below the next thing you guys want me to talk about. There's a few things that I'm thinking, draft stuff, maybe formation stub stuff, I'm not sure yet, but there are some things that I have that I'm thinking about up here, and I will definitely check it out and hopefully do a video on it. So thank you again for watching. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe if you have not already, turn on that bell notification. I will see you guys next time.